Welcome into a Wednesday live edition of the Desmond Johnson Show. Sorry for the late start. Had some technical difficulties here. Desmond Johnson here in the house. Matt Alquiza from Hornets on SI, beat writer for the Charlotte Hornets in the house. The Charlotte Hornets are they're going through it right now. We're going to talk about why this latest stretch of the Hornets losing has become historic. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about should they shut down LaMelo Ball, Mark Williams, and others? And we'll go around the league. Luka dropping a triple-double in the Mavericks last night, and much, much more. It's Around the NBA Wednesday edition here on the Desmond Johnson Show. Let's go ahead and run that intro. Let's get it in.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city need that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you want and get your weed whacked. I'm going harder than a martyr on the slaughter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's fourth and inches. I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And welcome into the Desmond Johnson Show here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. Desmond Johnson, your host here. It is NBA Wednesday. Welcoming in Matt Alquiza, friend of the program from Hornets on SI. What's going on, Matt? How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, just sitting in my car outside of my office at the day job, so not too bad. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Not going to keep it too long. Not a whole lot to really dig into here in terms of the Charlotte Hornets, but it did need to be explained what's going on. The Hornets have been bad all year. Let's just start off right there. They're one of, I think they're in like a three-way tie for like second worst record in the league or something to that course, but they're on pace for about 20 wins, maybe 19 wins for the season. But the past couple of days, the Hornets have turned into something completely just different. They were bad before, but just like bad, like in terms of typical bad in the NBA. But they've gotten much, much worse in the past couple of days. They've been the single worst team in NBA history over the past 4 days. Since Saturday, February 22nd, they've played 3 games. They've had a 53-point loss to the Portland Trailblazers, a 42-point loss to the Sacramento Kings, and a 36-point loss to the Golden State Warriors last night. Combined, that means they've lost their last 3 games by 131 points. That is by far the worst 3-game stretch in NBA history, according to StatHead. It's not even close to the previous record. That was the 21-22 Portland Trailblazers, and they were outscored by 114 points in a 3-game span back during that season in April. What do you what do you attest to? Why is this happening? Because they had some of their stars out there. I mean, LaMelo Ball was available for 2 of the 3 games. Miles Bridges played. Mark Williams played a couple of those games. They're not very deep. They really never were at the beginning of the year. And of course, they've had injuries. Brandon Miller's out for the year. Grant Williams is out for the year. But what do you think is the number reason why the bottom has fallen out for the Hornets over the past week or so compared to, I mean, we just saw them beat the Lakers, over a week ago, and they're all excited in the locker room and everything like they just won the national championship. What's happened since then?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unfathomable how bad it's been. I've said all year how impressive it has been that Charles Lee has this ragtag group of Hornets competing in games. I mean, we saw, they beat the Lakers last week. The day after the trade deadline, the Spurs come to Charlotte. The Hornets win. The week before that, they play close games back-to-back nights against the Nuggets and the Clippers. These past 3 games are the worst the Hornets have played all year. I think there's a couple of reasons. I think number one, they're on the back end of this long road trip. They've been out west for over a week now, post All-Star, and I'm sure that's definitely got something to do with it. The guys are, ready to be home, see their family, sleep in their own bed. There's definitely like a human element that I think plays into it here. I think there's that. The matchups have been really bad for the Hornets. I think Portland is perfectly constructed to just crush a bad team like the Hornets right now. They have just a ton of long, athletic wing slash guard defenders, and the Hornets have two guys that can create shots at a high level. LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges. If you have good individual defenders that can shut those two guys down, Charlotte has no path to good offense outside of that. Nick Smith can create shots on his own every once in a while, but he's an undersized guard and kind of is a one-trick pony, or he's going to catch and shoot or get to the mid-range and put up a turnaround jumper or a floater. Charlotte just has no path to consistent offense right now, and I think teams are realizing that if you can shut the water off via LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges, the Hornets really have no way to score, save for a Seth Curry heater every once in a while or a Nick Smith flurry of buckets.
But you can't really depend on that, in terms of
no. I mean, Seth Curry is what? Yeah, Seth Curry's 34 years old at this point, I think. Nick Smith Jr. is in his second year in the league. I think he's going to top out as, a third guard off the bench. So those aren't guys that you can rely on to score, and that's what the Hornets are doing. I mean, you lose Trey Mann for the year, you lose Brandon Miller for the year, LaMelo Ball in and out of the lineup. There's like I said, no path to consistent offense for the Hornets right now, and it's really bit them the past 3 nights specifically.
So that brings up Matt Alquiza over here with us from Hornets on SI. You can follow him on X at M Alquiza 8. That brings up the inevitable question of what do you do with LaMelo and like Mark Williams? Actually, let's start with Mark Williams. Mark Williams traded to the Lakers right after that Luka Doncic AD trade. Everything looks fine. He just played in the game, I think, a night or two previously. Lakers claim he failed the physical. He gets sent back to Charlotte. First game back with the Hornets, they end up playing the Lakers in a makeup game from when there was the fires in LA. So they were already out in LA to play that makeup game. And I think that was the last win the Hornets had was against that Lakers squad. What do you think are the future plans for Mark Williams in the franchise? Because typically, more often than not, trades get sent through. You don't really have a situation where a guy goes, the trade doesn't happen, the guy goes back to the original team, and then what happens in the situation here? Because I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain, trying to figure out if there was another time where a guy gets sent back to his original team and he stays there, or they got other plans for him down the road. What do you think the plans are for Mark Williams with the Hornets if they were willing to trade him to the Lakers?
Yeah, you can tell me if we were to sit here a year from now, you can tell me that Mark Williams is on the Hornets, I would believe it. You can tell me that Mark Williams is on a different team, I would believe it. I don't really know what you do right now because the Hornets kind of backed themselves into a corner. It is very clear that Mark Williams is not a part of their future plans because they were willing to trade him to the Lakers. If they wanted to build around Mark Williams, continue building around this quote unquote core four that folks have been talking about for the last few weeks with Ball, Miller, Bridges, and Williams, they wouldn't have traded him. They wouldn't have accepted the package of Connect and a first round pick for Williams. I don't think they're planning on building around him long term, but because the Lakers failed him on that physical, what team around the league is going to be willing to part with any asset to bring in Mark Williams, who now has this giant red flag on his profile? So I don't think the Hornets want him around long term, but I don't see another team making a move for him anytime soon. So, I think there's a chance that Williams' rookie contract runs out, that he hits free agency and walks in a couple of years. I think there's also a chance that the Hornets could try to extend him this summer when he becomes eligible for his second contract extension on a cheaper deal. He was kind of playing his way into a nice contract with whoever was going to pay him next. But again, this giant red flag on his profile now that the Lakers unearthed. Obviously, we don't know what exactly it was. We don't know why he failed the physical, but that information is out there. It's public. The whole world knows it. So they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with Williams at this point.
Yeah, they kind of did Mark Williams dirty by doing that because you're right. Now he's going to he was already kind of having a stigma of being injury prone early in his career, but now it's a whole other level when like a team like the Lakers is like, nah, we changed our mind. We don't want you. It's like, what do we do with him now? And it reminds me of last season. I was one of the ones who I really wanted Zach Edey from Purdue. I wanted the Hornets to kick the tires on Edey because I saw kind of, from watching the playoffs and the finals, it felt like we were starting to revert back to basketball how I grew up, where it was more of an inside-out game. Like you need a big man, like an actual traditional big man to win in today's NBA. You can only get so far jacking 53 pointers in a game or whatever and just kind of passing it around the perimeter. The teams that have been successful over the past 3 or 4 seasons, other than Boston, now last year that was a little bit of asterisk because they were so good offensively and defensively, and I think they were the number 1 3-point shooting team in the league in terms of attempts and makes. So that kind of washed itself out. But before that, most of the teams that won the past couple of years had some sort of big man, whether it was Giannis in Milwaukee or Joker in Denver. There's some guy that can get in and get you 30 points like in the paint. And I was thinking the Hornets kind of need somebody like that because I can't depend on Mark Williams because he's never really out on the floor. He's missed like 60% of his games, it feels like, the past 3 years. But he's also like 21 or something like that. So what do you kind of do here? And when they traded him, I'm like, all right, well, they kind of recognized it too. And you bring in a kid like Dalton Knack who can shoot. I can kind of see what they're doing. Maybe they'll go after a big man this year or whatever. But now that he's back, I don't know exactly the dynamic. And it feels like they've kind of done like this since he came back. Like it's almost like, I don't want to say it's a disconnect between the players and the front office, but it's a very young team. It's one of the youngest teams in the NBA. If you all see a guy that's in your locker room get traded off, something happens, he comes back, you have to acclimate him back into the locker room. I imagine that'd be hard to do that, especially when you've only won 14 games all year to begin with. You've got players shuffling in and out and everything else. So that's the Mark Williams side of this. The LaMelo side of this is a little bit more interesting because LaMelo just signed a $200+ million extension. Was it last offseason before? So he's in the middle of that extension now. So I can see the argument of no, he needs to play because we're paying him, blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, it's like, what are you playing for? You're not getting in the playoffs. You're kind of ruining your draft stock by playing your best player and potentially winning games. I'm not saying they should tank, but what do you do with LaMelo right now? Would you bench him for the rest of the year and just let him rest up, or do you let him play because he's still young too? Man, we might have lost Matt there. Don't know if Matt, can you hear us? Yeah, I think we might have lost Matt, but we'll see if he can pop back in. But yeah, the question is, should they sit LaMelo Ball? I'm thinking they should to get better draft stock going forward here, and we'll see if Matt can hop back on here in just a bit. But with LaMelo, you're not really doing any favors playing him. He played in 2 of the last 3 games and he got blown out by average of 40 points per game in those games. He's dealing with an ankle injury right now. It's only going to get worse if he's continuing to play on it. So the question remains, do the Hornets need to bench LaMelo Ball? And if you're watching live right now on X or on Facebook, you can actually answer that question in the comments section below. You can put down the bottom whether or not they should bench LaMelo Ball for the rest of the season and maybe try to get someone like a Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey high in the draft. So see if we can get Matt back in here. It's working. It's trying. There it is. Gotcha. Can you hear us? I don't know if we got your audio. Bear with us, guys. We're dealing with some technical difficulties today. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm back now.
Yeah.
Yep.
There it is. Gotcha. We were just talking about LaMelo Ball, and what should the Hornets do with him? Should they bench LaMelo for the rest of the year? They're sitting at 14-40, so 54 games. There's another 20, less than that, like
25,
20 games left. Yeah. What do you do here with the last month of the season? Do you let LaMelo play and risk him damaging that ankle further, or do you bench him and just call the season a mulligan and move the next year? Because I don't even think even the Hornets expect to be this bad this year in terms of the front office and the coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to play him if he's healthy. You just need to know what you have. I mean, he's missed so much time the past couple of seasons that there's really no reason to bench him at this point. They're not winning games with him. They're not going to win games without him. Yeah, I think if Mark Williams is going to be around long term, you want to see if there's any sort of chemistry that he can build with LaMelo over the last few weeks and months of the season. So I see no reason in benching him at this point. Like I said, they're not going to win games with him. They're not going to win games without him. They can't really win their way out of the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes at this point. So I mean, I don't really see a reason in putting the bench at this point.
I'm sure with you reporting on the Hornets on a weekly basis, your mind has started to wander towards the NBA draft at this point with where the Hornets are and their pursuit for one of those bottom 3 slots to potentially get someone like Cooper Flagg. Is there somebody else out there besides Cooper Flagg that you've been looking at that would be a good fit with this Hornets roster as it's constructed right now?
Yeah, there's two guys specifically. VJ Edgecombe from Baylor. He's like a shooting guard, wing kind of deal. He he just does exactly what you want for a winning basketball team. He plays great defense. He's a very good shooter, improving shooter. He's gotten way better the second half of the season at Baylor. Really athletic, so you can imagine him running the break with LaMelo and Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller. I think he's just the kind of guy that you could fit into the Hornets starting lineup alongside Ball, Miller, Bridges, and Williams, and he's just going to fit right away and be exactly what they need. The other guy is Ace Bailey from Rutgers. He's like a 6'9", just really, really deadly shooter. All he can do is score the ball, but we've seen the last couple of nights the Hornets haven't cracked 100 points since the All-Star break. I don't think. Maybe they did in that Lakers game, barely. But they need scores, man. Ace Bailey is as a scorer at heart. There are a lot of red flags on his profile when it comes to defense and passing and rebounding, but the dude can fill it up, and the Hornets need guys that can get buckets right now, like we just talked about.
I mean, it's hard not to fantasize about having Cooper Flagg in this lineup next year. Although I will say, and let me ask your opinion on this too. Cooper Flagg had an interview with our friend Brendan Marks from The Athletic last week or week before last, where he was pretty adamant that he might return to school. And it's a little bit different than like when Zion Williamson said it a couple of years ago, NIL didn't exist. Whereas Duke could put together some kind of package that would be similar to what he might potentially make as the number 1 or number 2 draft pick in his first season in the NBA. How much of a threat do you think that is going forward with college, like the top 3 or 4 college players maybe deciding to come back to school and not leaving after freshman year? Because if I'm Cooper Flagg, I'm looking at it like this. I reclassified early to begin with, so I'm already a little bit younger than I'm supposed to be in this freshman year at Duke. I could be big man on campus sophomore year, rake in $15 million or whatever ends up being an NIL money, and play for Duke and be on TV 35 games a year, or go to the NBA, hope to be the savior of either the Wizards or the Hornets or whoever. I'm 19. It's 82 games instead of 35. I'm getting paid roughly the same amount over a longer part of the calendar. I'm sitting here thinking, you know what? It might be better to stay in college an extra year and then go. I don't think it would affect his draft stock either. Like, do you think that might be something that affects college players going forward, going into the NBA? It's not every college player. It's mainly those the guys you just mentioned, Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, like the number 1, 2, 3 picks each year. Do you think it could be a possibility they start going back to school because of NIL?
Yeah, those guys at the top of the draft, I don't think so, because it pushes back their like major earning potential a year. I mean, these guys, they get drafted at the top of the draft. I think they make really good money on their rookie contract, but it's that second contract that is going to be the life-changing generational wealth. And Cooper can go back to Duke for another year, but that just makes it one more year down the road for him to get that massive payday that he's looking for in the NBA.
Max deal,
and I just think, that super max deal, you make a couple all NBA teams, whatever. I think there's just too much risk in going back to Duke to play on like a $15 million, like you're saying, NIL deal for a year that is non-guaranteed past 2026. You want to lock in the future earnings right away. So get to the league, lock down your first guaranteed contract, continue improving with the top-notch training staffs, get to play against the best players in the world, the best coaching staffs in the world, continue to improve yourself so you can then, lock in that max deal a couple of years down the road. I see it for a guy like I think at a Duke like Isaiah Evans, he score for Duke, Isaiah Evans. I think it makes sense for him to come back. His draft stock is up in the air. He's maybe like a late first, early second round pick at the moment. Go back and get your NIL money. You be the big man on campus for a year after, taking your lumps and coming off the bench in 2024, 25. So guys like that, I think it makes a lot more sense. Maximize your earning potential because you don't know what it's going to be in the NBA. You don't know how the front offices are going to, rank you going into the draft this coming year. So makes more sense for guys who are late first, early second round picks, not the Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, or Ace Bailey guys at the top, in my opinion.
And then real quick before I get you out of here on a condensed version of the Desmond Johnson Show today, NBA style Wednesday, I'm looking at the standings in the NBA as we go around the NBA here. I'm over in the Western Conference. The Thunder currently are the 1 seed at 46-11. The Grizzlies right behind them. The Nuggets are in third. The Los Angeles Lakers in fourth. They've moved up. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They're on a 3-game winning streak. Last night, Luka became the third player in NBA history to record triple doubles versus 30 NBA teams, having doing it against his former team, the Dallas Mavericks. He finished the night with 19 points, 15 rebounds, 12 assists, and 35 minutes of playing time. Thoughts on the pairing of Luka Doncic and LeBron James with the Lakers? And were you surprised with how quick, because I don't think I've spoken to you since before All-Star break when that trade happened. Were you surprised at how quickly the Lakers came off of AD, considering how much they went after him for a couple of years ago? They got the ring that they wanted with him, but this seemed like a move for the future, like after LeBron with the Luka deal. How shocked were you when that deal went down? And thoughts on Luka and LeBron? Can that work in LA this season? Because they're both ball dominant type players. They need the balls in their hand.
Yeah, I mean, super shocked when it went down. But if you put yourself in the Lakers' shoes, you have an opportunity to acquire Luka Doncic, a 25-year-old superstar that just carried a team to the NBA Finals. I mean, you don't turn that down, no matter who they're calling for in that trade. Honestly, I think if Dallas called LA and said, "Hey, would you consider trading LeBron for Luka?" At this point, I think the Lakers wouldn't say no to that. I think the Lakers would have traded LeBron in that deal as well. I mean, like I said, you're getting this 25-year-old superstar who for the next decade is going to be the face of your franchise, and you know that you're always going to have at least an outside shot at ring with Luka on your team. So not shocked at all that the Lakers did it. Obviously incredibly shocked, like the whole rest of the world, that Dallas did it. And I mean, I think it's going to work. I've said to everybody, yeah, LeBron needs the ball. Yeah, Luka needs the ball. But there's just like so much second side action that happens in the NBA right now where LeBron gets doubled and he's kicking the ball to Luka off a double team, who now is like getting a chance to work against like a defense that's like tilted to the opposite side of the floor, and then vice versa. Like, yeah, those guys both need the ball, but they can also be the deadliest off-ball player in the league because those guys' basketball IQs are like Einstein level through the roof. Like they're always going to make the right play. I mean, you watched that game last night. Some of the skip passes, the cross-court passes that Luka and LeBron are throwing to like Dorian Finney-Smith and Rui Hachimura, just wide open shots all night for the Lakers. They played that game against Denver on Saturday. They could have scored 200 points with the looks they were getting against that Denver defense. So, yeah, I have no problem, no questions it's going to work on offense. On defense, they're going to have some troubles come playoff time, but they're going to score 150 points a game if they really want to.
Matt, give me one team in the Western Conference and one team in the Eastern Conference you're keeping an eye on in terms of a surprise team, kind of like a Dallas Maverick team from last year that made it all the way to the NBA Finals that none of us were really picking when it started, but a team that has that potential to kind of get there. Maybe it's the Mavericks this year in the West. Who are you looking at in the West first? Really outside that top four: Thunder, Grizzlies, Nuggets, Lakers. You got a group of Rockets, Clippers, Timberwolves, Warriors, Mavs, Kings, all the way down to the 10 spot there. Out of that group there in the West, who are you keeping an eye on in terms of the way they're playing and could make some noise in the playoffs?
Yeah, it's the Warriors. I mean, they've played incredible since acquiring Jimmy Butler. I think similarly to LeBron and Luka, but on a different level. I think Steph and Jimmy just play like really, really well off each other. He gives the Warriors that second shot creator that they didn't have before. The big three of Steph, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green are going to cause a lot of problems on offense for a lot of teams in the West. And those are guys that have that championship pedigree. They have the coach that's been there before, and Steve Kerr. So I'm watching the Warriors out West. I think they need, if they can get hot in the second half of the season, escape the play-in tournament, get the 5th or 6th seed going into the Western Conference playoffs, I think they have a chance to pull a couple of upsets. And I mean, if you can make your way to the Western Conference Finals, I have a hard time picking against the Warriors in that scenario with how good Steph and Jimmy can be on that stage. And then in the East, similarly, I think the Bucks in the East. Giannis is still playing like a top 5 player in basketball. You look across the Eastern Conference, I think the team that has the best chance of slowing down Giannis specifically is Cleveland. But it's hard. You can only slow down Giannis so much. Like, he is just a walking 30-point game, 15 rebounds. And when he gets focused by opposing defenses, he's also a great passer, great playmaker. So I think if there's one guy in the Eastern Conference that could carry his team through a Cleveland, through a Boston, it's Giannis right now. So I'm looking out for them to make a run in the East. If they can pull an upset on either Cleveland or Boston in round 2, I think that they have a championship ceiling, in my opinion, still.
I totally agree with the Golden. I'm intrigued by Golden State. A lot of people said Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry couldn't work. And I'm like, that looks like it would be a perfect thing for Steph to be able to run around free like he was 5 years ago or whatnot. And it seems like that's what's happening. And then I don't know why. I haven't just been paying attention to him, but there's this Detroit Pistons team that's in the 6th seed right now in the Eastern Conference. It's on a 7-game win streak. They're 8-2 in their last 10. I'm just like,
they're fun, man.
Detroit was with us. Like, what happened? Like, how did they were just as bad as we were.
Cade Cunningham. They were the worst team in the history of basketball for the first 6 months of last season. But I mean, Cade Cunningham, he's having an All NBA season. They got changed their coach. JB Bickerstaff is the ultimate floor raiser as a head coach. So yeah, they're awesome. When I'm sitting down at 7:30 at night to turn on League Pass, I'm turning on the Pistons way more than I should be right now because they play a really fun brand of basketball. At this point, honestly, man, I watch the Hornets because I have to. At this point,
right.
There is no joy in watching that team right now, unfortunately.
I'd imagine the best part of watching the Hornets is probably Eric Collins at this point, the announcer, more than anything else. If you're watching on the Hornets Television Network, so that's Matt Alquiza. Follow him on X at MAlquiza8 for the latest in Hornets news and around the NBA. Tomorrow, Friday, we will have Dennis Cox, maybe Chris Lee from WRAL from Panthers Playbook. We're gonna get into some Panther stuff finally. The combine's going on this week. We'll look into some of their top picks for offense and defense for what the Panthers should do with the 8th pick overall. We'll get into some free agency stuff. A lot of Panther stuff we're about to start diving back into again, so I know you guys have missed that. So we'll get into that later on this week on Friday. For Matt, I'm Desmond Johnson. You've been watching the Desmond Johnson Show on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. Have a great Wednesday.